1 minute. Someone's keying their microphone. Okay, stand by for systems. Okay, Steve. Okay, you got that. Someone's...
After years of unanswered questions, a break in the unsolved Gilgo Beach murders out of Long Island.
Hey, no!
All right, I'm done.
No!
I'm done.
Ah!
You're all right. You're all right. You're all right.
Ah! You're dead, man! Ah!
A little bit earlier, the Hampton County District Attorney just released new evidence of the abduction and murder of Holly Karina of Sturbridge, a forced serial killer more than 30 years after the last victim was found.
The New Bedford highway murders terrorized the South Coast back in the 80s, and as chief investigator Cheryl Fiandato reports, one victim's family believes the case is one tip away from being solved.
There are new developments in a case that terrorized the central U.S. for decades. Investigators believe the BTK killer may have had more victims than we first knew. Emily Akena now and what they found in his backyard this week.
Hey! You want to get... Hey! Hey! What is me? What is me? Hey! Put your hands up! Put your hands up! Get on the ground! Hey, got one in the back! One in the back! I swear to God! That's it! You move your mother ass! Black pants coming down the hill! Got you on foot! Go downstairs! That's the time we don't want to come down the ramp. I'm gonna tell you to sit off you, boy! Coming down the ramp, gray sweatshirt, black pants, mask on. Guy just jumped down. Yeah, he just jumped down.
Yeah, we will. What have you been arrested for? You ever been arrested before?
Danny, where's your car?
Never been arrested before in LA?
Foot was down.
How long ago? Sit up. How long ago? What's your name? What's your name?
11.
Developing this morning, new insight into capturing a suspected serial killer. The California man is believed to be behind a string of brutal murders that started back in July. Well, police say he was caught yesterday while he was hunting for another victim. Here's CBS's Bradley Blackburn.
Stockton, California police say this is the suspected serial killer who has had an entire city frozen in fear. Wesley Brownlee was arrested just after 2 a.m. Saturday near his Stockton home.
Tonight in Moscow, Idaho, Brian Koberger, the man charged with stabbing 4 college students to death, now indicted by a grand jury.
It would have made a frightening Hitchcock thriller if the crimes hadn't been real. A killer was stalking Boston women, raping and strangling them. In the most grotesque manner, he would display his work, and he always left a bizarre calling card, a nylon tied in a granny knot around the neck of each victim.
Good evening. Welcome to 22 News at 11. An intriguing development tonight concerning the search for the killer of Molly Bish.
Understandably, security is extremely tight here at the Pensacola City Jail. On the second floor of this building, Ted Bundy is under constant guard. Authorities are very well aware of the fact that Bundy has twice escaped from jail, and now that they know who he is, they are not about to let him slip away again. When he was arrested shortly after midnight on Wednesday, he was just considered a belligerent speeder. He fought with arresting officer David Lee when Lee stopped him for speeding. Only late last night, following FBI fingerprint identification, did Pensacola police learn they had captured one of the most wanted and, according to the FBI, most dangerous criminals in the country.
On the evening of February 9th, 2004, almost 18 years ago, Maura Murray crashed her car on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire, never to be seen again.
I can't. Negative. I can't say. All I can say is this man needed help. This man seemed like a man who was coming up to a storm or to a climax. This very blood-curdling thing at one of the cutoffs where he said, children kill, and then a sort of an agonized cutoff, enough to turn your hair whiter than mine.
So inside the thrift shop, St. Vincent de Paul, attorney Melvin Belli and the San Francisco police waited for the Zodiac killer.
What's up, Devin?
We're going to have a great time together.
It may be the creepiest episode ever on The Dating Game, because this bachelor looking for love back in 1978 is actually a serial killer.
This afternoon, we have learned a convicted pedophile who admitted to assaulting dozens of children will not be getting out of prison today.
A lawyer for Wayne Chapman tells us several things need to be done before he's officially released. Many people are upset that Chapman will even go free. WBZ's Adam Myler has more now at noon from Shirley.
Well, it is a case that has never gone cold for the family of Holly Peranian, who would have turned 40 years old last month. Today, investigators renewed their call for the public's help with this investigation. Much of it centered on this T-shirt that you see behind me, which was among items found in the area of Brimfield, where Holly's remains were uncovered back in October of 1993. Take a closer look at it, with a very distinguishing color and Boston logo. Within the past 6 months, further forensic testing has been done, thanks to advances in testing procedures. Investigators want some very specific information related to it, and Holly Peranian's family hopes to finally have some closure.
Kohberger has yet to enter a plea, but his previous attorney said he believes he'll be exonerated. The indictment follows his December arrest at his family home in Pennsylvania. More than 45 days after Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found brutally murdered in this college house. According to court documents, Kohberger's DNA was found on a knife sheath at the crime scene, and his white Hyundai Elantra seen driving here during a routine traffic stop.
Devastating crime. They compare, in the annals of crime, they compare absolutely with Jack the Ripper. Perhaps even worse, because they were quiet and deadly.
The Strangler's first victim was Anna Slessers, a 55-year-old divorcee, brutally beaten and strangled while a parade passed down her Back Bay Street. From June 1962 until January 1964, 10 more women would die the same way.
Believes he may have uncovered evidence that could lead to Molly's murderer. A lengthy article in the Worcester Telegram chronicles a custody investigation that ended with Gerald Battistoni serving up to 12 years for raping his girlfriend's daughter.
The former Tacoma and Seattle resident is a suspect in 36 sex killings in Colorado, Utah, Oregon, and Washington. And now he is being questioned in connection with 2 murders at a sorority house at Florida State University in Tallahassee.
As officials announce a suspect is now in custody. Multiple news outlets now reporting the suspect is 59-year-old Rex Thurman of Massapequa Park.
Okay, everybody, let's get off the district. Let's put in another 30 seconds next round. Roger. And 008, hold us heading. I'm in the game 004. How does that look? Looks good, Steve, and all systems are okay here. The winds are westerly and 10 knots. Okay, this is NASA 1 calling 10 seconds now. 10 seconds, roger. 0, 5, 4, 3, I've got a blowout. Day for 3. Introduce 0. Edges out. I can't hold out to 2. Correction, not 4. So I'm trying to flight base emergency. Flight call. I can't hold it. She's breaking up. She's breaking.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Hi, Aaron. How are you? Oh, you got mute there.
There we go.
There you
Hi,
go.
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Tonight we have one of those cases that if you like unsolved cases, those are the kinds that I prefer because I kind of like to get my mind into it as opposed to thinking too much about what the victims go through.
Definitely.
This is one that's really captured the imagination and the fascination of people for almost since it happened, I guess so, in 2016. I have a little clip.
1996, Kev.
Oh, no, oh, Jesus, that's right. My God. I was almost young back then. Let's
Oh God.
almost.
I was so much younger.
Let's
Boston police are asking for the public's help cracking a murder case that dates back more than 2 decades. 20-year-old Karina Holmer was last seen June 22nd, 1996. Her torso was later found in a dumpster in Boston. Holmer worked as an au pair for a family in Dover. As the 25th anniversary of her death approaches, investigators are making another plea to the community. Anyone with information, large or small, relative to this investigation is asked to call Boston police.
Okay, so that's tonight's case. Karina Holmer, the nanny from Sweden, who her torso was found from the stomach up and the lower section of her body was never found. So, Aaron, why don't you bring us through the case, set the stage?
Well, I want to start at the very beginning, actually, with Karina, as in who she was. She was a 19-year-old girl from Sweden who had actually won a lottery before she left for the US. She was already planning the trip. Some sources are a little bit muddied on whether she used the money to buy the ticket to the US or if she used it as spending money when she got here. I think it was the latter, but I'm not positive. I think from all accounts from her family, she had already planned on coming to the US. So that was a little bit of a head start financially before she got here. I have read that she was a lovely girl, very sweet, loved playing with kids, loved caring for kids. So, you also read a lot of stuff about her being college age and going out and getting wasted with her friends. So it's kind of, two sides to the same person. So, in any event, she had planned to come to the US and signed up to be an au pair with a family in Dover, Massachusetts. She went through an agency, apparently, an agency in Sweden that wasn't totally on the level from what I've read. She wasn't in any of the official databases. She wasn't given I love that picture, by the way. I love it.
It's a great picture.
She wasn't given one of the visas. I think it was a 13-month visa to live in the US and work in the US. So she was technically here illegally. So I don't know how relevant that is personally, but I do think it's an interesting thing that the guy who ran this supposed agency that she went through to come to the US later folded his business because of what happened to Karina. So he apparently struggled with a lot of guilt over what happened to her. So she traveled to the US in March of 1996 and took up a job with, oh God, what was his name? Fred Trapp? I think that's his name.
The name of the guy that owned the house that she worked
Yeah,
for?
yeah, the dad. I'm blanking so hard right now.
I'll look it up for you in a second. Sorry, I'm just
Jesus.
messaging a
Beantown.
possible guest.
Oh boy. Yeah, I think it was Fred Trapp and his wife Susan. She had signed on to be a nanny with them and to watch their 2 children in exchange for, some money and living at their home during the week. And apparently, and this is sort of muddy also, I'm not positive how true every word of this is, so I'm reporting it just as I've read in sources that the father, her boss, had offered up his studio apartment or his photography studio on A Street in South Boston to let her stay there for the weekend so she could go out into the city with her friends and have a place to crash, not worry about coming all the way back to Dover at night after drinking with her friends in the city. So
I got the names for you. It's
sort of the home base.
Frank Rapp Nitcher and Rapp Nitcher. Yeah, and the house their main house was in Dover,
Mass. Yep.
Frank was a renowned photographer, and Susan was a famous painter.
Yes.
So these were kind of high society types, right?
Yeah, definitely upper middle class, if not upper class. I mean, those are some pretty high profile career choices. So that's something to put in your back pocket for later on this too.
They would have been connected to a lot of people. When I say high society, not so much money. I mean, there may have been a lot of money, but just you get invited to all the right parties and make all the right connections. And
exactly. So the right folks, definitely. So she started working there in March, and she would write letters home to her friends and home to her family, talking about, at first everything was fantastic. She loved the kids. She loved working for these people. She loved making friends with other au pairs who had actually come from Sweden as well. So she had a large group of friends that she would spend time with, and she felt comfortable, I guess, to begin with her boss and with the work. So and then sort of a couple months after she started working there, the tone of her letters home started to change. She would write things back to her friends saying like, oh, this is a lot more cleaning than I was expecting. I'm not really feeling this anymore. I think I'm going to cut my trip short. And notably, the last letter that she wrote to her friend at home had actually said, something terrible has happened. I can't tell you right now, but I'm going to tell you when I get home. And that's the last this friend actually ever heard from her. So,
and that letter was in June, right?
Yeah, the beginning of June, I believe. I don't have an exact date on it, but I
think it was in June, and the word was her plan to return home was in August, and then I think she was murdered in July, right? Mid-July?
No, June. It was late June.
She was murdered in late June. Okay, all right,
Yep.
all right. Okay.
Yep. So, so by all accounts, she was a bit of a partier. She was only 20 when this all went down. So she was 19, I guess, before she went, and then turned 20. So she was still not of legal drinking age in the United States, which, as we all know, is kind of a bummer. But in 96, probably a hell of a lot easier to get away with a fake ID, which she did, than it is now. So
wasn't easy in my bar.
Really? Were you strict with your?
We were strict. Yeah, we tried to be strict. Yeah.
Did you? Well, so you, as a former bar owner, you would be able to tell me this. When did they start using the machine?
The machine to check IDs.
Yeah.
The problem it was expensive. We didn't use it because it was kind of pointless, because all it told you was the ID was good. It didn't tell you whether it was that person's. So if someone came in with their sister or their cousin's ID, all it told you was that it was a legitimate ID and it wasn't a faked ID. So it had some purpose, but it was like $1,000.
So if you got like your big sister's ID and used it as her, it would show up as legit because
that's right,
legitimate. Does that go for expired IDs too? I'm just wondering. I know this is a tangent, but I'm just wondering.
I mean, again, it's probably changed now. Maybe they have facial recognition software to match it, but the way it was back then, it would be it would say if it was expired. Yeah, anything wrong with the actual ID, if it was expired, if it was tampered with, if it wasn't from, because back then you could order, this is early internet, you could order in the 90s an ID somewhere else from another country and get it shipped.
Oh, okay.
When I was in the 80s, we just made them in the dorms.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember even when I was in high school, I remember somebody making fake IDs.
Yeah.
With a laminator and cardstock, I guess, So either way, but she did succeed in getting into bars in Boston with this fake ID, wherever she got it and however it was made. It was successful, so she was able to go out with her friends and have drinks and enjoy herself. And it was the night of Midsummer. It was the summer solstice, June 21st, 1996. Karina went out with her friends to Zanzibar, which is, as far as I know, by where Arlington and Boylston meet by the Public Garden in downtown Boston. Well, sort of Back Bay, I guess, is where that would be. I suck. I work in Back Bay and I don't know.
There's like a street that runs, I believe. I'm going on memory here because I did live in Boston and go to these clubs a little bit, but I believe there was a street that was perpendicular from the Comet that had clubs on both sides. I think it was in that little section there. And so it was an area that creeps would probably hang out. Actually, I remember seeing a lot of drug dealers trying to hang out down there.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because so at the end of the night when the bars close, there's 1,000 people coming out.
Right. And that's something to remember for the end of the night here. But the celebration in Sweden of Midsummer, which is celebrated on summer solstice, is huge. It's a huge holiday in Sweden. They go all out. They party like crazy. They drink their asses off. Like it's a really good time. So Karina, by some accounts, I guess, was not the hugest partier, but this was a special occasion. Her parents made it a point to state that in their interviews that she wasn't normally out of control, but this was a special occasion. It's a big holiday. She was out. She was tying one off. So the accounts as far as the circumstances of her leaving the bar differ a bit. So we're looking at last call. We're looking at late. The bar is about to close. And so we have, I believe, 3 different accounts of how she actually ended up outside of the bar, which is interesting to me. She was there with friends. People probably would have, agreed under normal circumstances, but this isn't normal circumstances. So some people say that she passed out in the bar because she drank too much. And the proprietor, owner, whoever was running the show that night, kicked her out. So he, led her outside. She walked outside, whatever it was, she ends up outside. Another account says that she walked out of her own accord with an older gentleman that she had been spending time with in the bar. And then the third account is that she actually just got up and walked out. So I can't report any of those things as fact because I don't know. But in any event, she ended up outside without her friends. She was outside.
And I think she was, it does sound like she was pretty drunk though, because she was dancing with a homeless guy and just kind of free-spiriting around there. We've all seen it in bars. So she's only 20. So even though she's in a bar,
Who hasn't been that guy?
Yeah, I mean, her drinking might be a little different than someone that was 22 that had a little more experience with it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and like I said, it was a special occasion, so she's, probably in a mood where she's like, I don't care, like, let's just do it. And I don't know what the culture is like in Sweden, but from everything I've heard about Midsummer, it is like New Year's Eve. So they drink like it's the end of the world, apparently. So she's outside, friends are inside. The bar is closing. Everyone's coming out onto the street, and there's also differing accounts of who saw her and when. So this is again, like this is what's so interesting about this story. No one can agree on the last time she was actually seen. So we've got the account of the homeless gentleman who was dancing with her because she was, by all accounts, wasted. So she decides to start dancing with a homeless guy in an alley next to Zanzibar. So they actually, I believe that, or part of that was caught on CCTV. I'm not positive. There is some camera footage of her later in the evening, later in the early morning hours, apparently, of Sunday. But she was seen dancing with this homeless man. I found his name and now I can't remember it. But he was cleared almost immediately. So he had nothing to do with it, apparently. There's other accounts that say that she left with an older man who then put her in his car and volunteered to give her a ride home. Home being the studio for her boss. So that is out on A Street. And you're pretty familiar with Boston, right?
Yeah, but I don't know where that is.
Okay, so A Street is down in what is now the Hopping Seaport area. It's
okay, all right, sure. Yeah.
It's past all the craziness.
Yes, that's pretty far from the clubs and from where she ended up. But yeah.
I mapped it.
Yeah.
So the actual walking time at a normal pace between that area of Boylston Street and the address on A Street is actually 47 minutes. So who is walking home? Who's walking that terribly, terribly drunk in the middle of the night alone?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a good idea. I've heard a lot of different accounts of people saying, pay the $5 for a cab. Because in 96, it's only a couple of miles, but it's a lot of walking. So a cab would only cost you $5 back then to get from Boylston over to Fort Point.
Jennifer just pointed out that it was super industrial back then, and that's true. It's really, really different now. Back then it was undeveloped, and it was really different. Yeah.
It's different now than it was last week. It's so rapid, the construction and the building up and everything over there. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's completely insane. I used to work down there. I worked in the one building that was built before any of the other stuff that has popped up in the last 10 years or so. And I remember trying to walk to Dunkin' Donuts from there, and it was like just a stretch of nothing. You go from the building I worked in to the ICA to Pier 4 to the World Trade, and there's nothing in between. It was dirt parking lots and the World Trade Center down there. And now you can't even see the World Trade Center because there's so many buildings popping up in between. In any event, it's a long ass walk. I'm sure that any reasonable person, that Karina included, would probably not want to take that walk at 2 or 3 in the morning after drinking to excess. So
can I just occasionally, so I'll have a question on these, on some things that pop up here, and I just want to ask them so I won't forget. Was there any sign that she ever went to the loft after the club at all?
So there, again, accounts differ on this, because the first, when the family first reported her missing was, I believe, Monday, and her boss actually went to the studio to see if she was there. And there were belongings there. It looked like she had intended to come back, and there's nothing.
And is that when they call? I know we're skipping ahead to the story, so I'll go just briefly. Is that where when they called the cops?
I thought they had called the cops before, but I read 2 different reports. One that said they had reported her missing Sunday night, and one that said they had reported her missing Monday.
Okay, all right. So we'll go back to that. Let's get back to where you were. I'm sorry.
Well, I feel like I'm just kind of blabbing on, so please keep interrupting me because this is awful. So one of the accounts was that she left with an older man. She got into his car and took off. Another account says that they saw her outside talking to 4 men in a silver car who were trying to talk her into going to an after party. There was no identification of these guys, no hint as to where they were going or who they actually were. There's different accounts that have her inside a silver car with two men. And one of her friends states that he approached the car to say, hey, we're leaving, him and the rest of the friends that she had come to the bar with. And the guy in the silver car got very aggressive with this friend and said, who the fuck do you think you are? Get the hell away from my car. And Karina said, no, go ahead. I'll make my own way home. So there's several different accounts of where she was and who she was with.
But that last one sounds very specific. So if you're talking about a random person just saying, oh, I think I saw this blonde woman and she was wearing silver pants and she got into this car, that's just witnesses you can't really count on. But if her friends actually went up and spoke to her, I would say that's pretty solid.
That's the story I'm more inclined to believe. Yeah. Is that she got into a car with somebody. There's no ID on these guys, so we don't know who they are.
So was it just her and two men, or were there any other women? Or
that's what I read, that it was her and two men in a silver car.
Okay.
And the last
any description of the men, like their age or
not that I could find.
Okay.
I wasn't able to find any information about these guys. From what I can assume, they were not outside of her age range, really, because I feel like with people mentioning, oh, she was with an older guy dancing in the club, I feel like if there had been a giant age discrepancy, or at least a minor one, someone would have mentioned that. So I think they were probably younger men in this car.
Did Karina have a cell phone?
No.
You could have them in '96. They were around. My girlfriend.
Oh yeah. I had one.
Yeah.
I had a Nokia brick back then. It was awesome. It's probably still working somewhere. No, not that I'm aware of. I don't remember. I don't recall hearing anything about her having.
Because it's an interesting thing. Like, because if you called someone to pick you up or called to meet someone, hey, I'm drunk, I'm down here. Do you want it? I mean,
yeah, it would have helped.
I wonder if that's just missing from the story. I would guess there's a good chance she probably did, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed too, in my travels that Europe was way, way far ahead of us with the cell phone game. When I traveled to Ireland in my semester abroad, I actually learned texting from them. And this was like 2004, before people were beep, 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 like that whole thing. I mean, I wasn't familiar with it. The only communication I had with my friends back then was AOL Instant Messenger. So, the last time that she was seen anywhere on camera was in front of Store 24, which is at the intersection of Haviland and Mass Ave, right on the other side of the Prudential Center. So she was seen on video there between, I think, 3:30 and 4 a.m. that night.
On video? Oh, so that's fairly confirmed then.
Yeah,
okay.
There was video footage of her in the Store 24. I don't know if she was with anyone.
Yeah.
I have no idea. All I know is that she was seen on camera there. So that is the last place that anyone actually saw her alive,
and that's
was at that Store 24.
And that's fairly close to where they found her, right?
Yes. I was just going to say, coincidentally, the intersection of Haviland and Mass Ave is a block away from the intersection, actually less than a block away from the intersection of Mass Ave and Boylston, which is, you would basically go back up to Boylston on Mass Ave and then go a block over to Ipswich, that's the intersection. That's the building, which was on the corner of Ipswich and Boylston, that she was found behind in the dumpster behind that. So, yeah. So I guess,
so when was she found too?
I thought it was the next day.
No, it's definitely at least, I think it's 2 days. I can look it up, but I believe it's, which is kind of a key piece of information. Hold on. Let me keep talking. I'll look it up here and see.
Okay. Well, I do know the circumstances of how she was found, but again, like, these articles are kind of old. They're not really specific. So I'm looking for an actual date and time. Oh, there you go. Seen by a witness between 3:30 and 4 that morning at a nearby store 24.
2 days
But
later. Yeah, 2 days later. Yeah.
That I had also read that there was CCTV footage of her at that store 24.
Okay.
So, okay. So 2 days later. Right. So she was, there was a homeless guy walking the neighborhood looking in dumpsters in that area for cans that he could trade in for money. And he came across a bag in this dumpster, this particular dumpster in the infamous alley. Thought, oh, let's see what's in there. And opened it, found another bag, opened that, and he found her torso. He found her top half, essentially. So he immediately freaks out, calls the police. They come down. They identify that it is only the top half of her body.
And the lower half was never found.
Right. They searched that dumpster. They searched a bunch of other dumpsters in the area. They never, ever found the bottom half of her body.
So Jay Roberts is pointing out kind of a key thing that about the wash. So when you read that, Erin, did you interpret that somebody washed her, like or do you think she? See, when I read it, and again, it's all how it's written in an article, right? I got the impression that she had washed off her own makeup. So, which since she was found 2 days later, that she was not killed that night, but was probably killed the next day, or even 2 days later. Even
yeah, there's a lot of theories out there that she was actually kept alive or was alive for at least 24 hours after she was last seen.
So do you think that she was washed by the killers, or she washed her own makeup off?
I think she was washed by the killer.
Because that really changes what this is all about here then. But I guess there's no way of knowing that then, huh?
No, but I mean, think about it, objectively, right? I mean, you're finding half a body that was obviously severed with a tool because you would need to cut her spine.
Yeah.
You would need a saw for that. Well, they actually did find a cylindrical piece of metal that they said was from a saw in a different dumpster, either the same day or the day after. They don't know if it was related, but they did pick it up. So there's that, but they never found the other half of her.
So why do you think? I think you were. I don't know. I thought you were going somewhere about explaining,
because I definitely wanted to get that out.
Yeah.
But
so why was she washed as opposed to she just woke up in the morning in someone's house, washed off her own makeup, took a shower, went to breakfast, came home and got killed?
Because it seems too precise to me. They said the cut was very clean. So that's one thing. I mean, if you're looking
how does that
at,
connect to the makeup is what I'm saying. I'm not seeing the connection. But
there's no blood on her body. It wasn't just her makeup was washed off. The whole
okay. I see what you're saying. All right. I got you.
What
I hear
was
you.
left of her was washed off. There was no blood on her.
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like I don't have the authority to say this, but my theory on this is that she was killed in a bathtub because it makes it easy. Although if you think about it, the angle is kind of hard because she was cut and it was a very, very straight, clean cut from what the police were saying at the time. So we've got half of her. We have no legs, no genitals. Essentially everything from the waist down is gone. But they did find, when they took her out, they did find ligature marks on her neck, which led them to believe that she was strangled. So we have a woman who was murdered by strangulation and then severed in half at the waist, essentially. So there were a lot of theories out there as to who killed her and why. Obviously, some people said, and I tend to agree, that the bottom half of her was taken to avoid being identified for a sexual assault.
Yeah,
because if there's no vagina, there's no evidence of sexual assault. So that is the going theory. A lot of people also say that they cut her that way to remove a pregnancy that would have pointed at somebody knocked her up who shouldn't have.
Mhm.
Maybe that was the terrible thing that happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do know that the police first went to her boss, and they looked into her boss and his wife.
And so we're going to get into that in a second, but it just, I don't know if you had time to research it. So actually, we're just going to put this out there too. If anybody has any information on this case, please reach out to us. And I've been told some people are going to be watching. So reach out to us. We do have some inside information on this case. I do. And I'm going to be careful about what I say though. So please talk about the juices theory in the case. Dave, aren't you supposed to be coming on? By the way, guys, Dave was supposed to be here with us, and he is our resident expert on this case.
Yes, he knows a lot more than
But Dave had kind of a situation in his family where he had to go to the airport to pick somebody up. So he is probably in his car typing this, but hopefully he can come on. But we want to be careful what we say, and for different reasons. So unless you have something that's, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe we'll hint at it. But anybody who wants to reach out to us, please do that. But I wanted to ask you before we get to all the other suspects or the whole suspect list. This is not something that happens just in. Seems to be, I don't know if enough to call it a pattern, but there are torso killers that.
Yes.
Where you, and it's kind of always the same thing when you find one half. Yeah.
I mean, I want to say it was around the time she was killed. It wasn't too long after that a pair of legs were found washed up on a beach in New York, I believe. They were subsequently identified as not being hers, but it just goes to show there's a lot of hiding clues by mutilation, which is a terrible, terrible way to classify this, but it's not completely untrue. I don't.
And so if somebody leaves, well, of course, the fact that we're finding the lower body means could just mean that we just didn't happen to find the upper half of the body, right?
Right.
But it would be a different theory, like, because it's perfectly rational, your theory in the whole in the nanny case here, that I think you're assuming or guessing that the lower part of the body was more destructively disposed of, so that there would no evidence would remain of it.
I mean, I'm not assuming anything, honestly.
No, well, I mean, I'm deducing that, or just theorizing.
Theorizing, yeah.
That that maybe somebody, if there was, you're trying to hide evidence of rape, so there might be semen in it or something like that, or you're trying to hide evidence of pregnancy. So if you cut the body in half, then you take the bottom half and destroy it much more methodically, so there's no traces, and then the top half you don't have to worry about it. That's kind of the theory here, right? So
I would assume. I mean, like, if you think about it, though, if this guy or woman, but I assume guy, not to be sexist or anything, but this feels like a male offender. If they did mutilate her for the interest of covering up a sexual assault, what would they do with the other half? I mean,
cut it up into smaller pieces that you could dispose of more easily, right? Or grind it up or something,
Right. So, I mean, who knows? That's the mystery, right?
Right.
Where's the rest of her? I mean,
well, that's what I'm wondering.
terrible.
Like, with the other torso killers, is it always the top half that's found, or frequently is, so you get the sense that might be what's going on, or is it more mixed up, or something like the one you mentioned in New York, or I think it was New York, they found the lower half. So that they found
legs, that was
right,
just severed legs. I don't know. I did once read. Oh my God. I don't remember who sent it to me. I feel bad too. I'm sure if they're in the comments, I'm sorry. Somebody sent me an article about a torso that was secured to a dolly that was found on a beach near Cape Cod.
Oh, that's the
Witter.
famous Provincetown one, I think, right? The lady in the dunes.
No, that's
No,
a different
okay,
one.
all right. That's a different
Yep.
one. All right.
This was literally no head, no arms, no legs, just torso.
That's not. I
Security
guess I'm
was
mixing them
all
up.
in
I thought that
lockdown.
was the lady in the dunes. I don't know.
So I don't I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, it seems to be I don't think it's half as common, as some might expect. It is something that's highly publicized when it does happen. So
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
it makes it seem like it happens more than it actually does. But
Right.
in any event, there was
Mhm.
just a torso.
Okay, so let's go down the suspect list.
All right. So I just want to pull my notes up. Just hold on one second. Because there were some really interesting things written about these suspects. Obviously, Frank Rapp, her boss, was the first one looked at as a suspect pretty extensively for a couple of reasons, mostly because he was her boss. He was the one who had allowed her to stay in this apartment in Boston. He's the one who would know where she is. And that letter to a friend sort of implies that if something was going to happen to her and she's talking about coming home and quitting this job, it's possible it could have been something with her boss. I think the police initially wanted to explore that connection before any other, because it was the one closest to her.
Yeah. Now, I guess they were the ones that called so the nanny that was not identified when they found her body. So they must have
Right.
put out a story and I don't know how they put out a drawing of her or something like that
Nope.
to help identify. No,
Nope.
because somehow her boss became suspicious. And I have a theory on this too, but her boss became suspicious or not suspicious, but thought maybe it was her and so it thought it was Karina. So they called the police, and that's how the identification was made. But then when the police showed up in Dover, they were described as being uncooperative. And I believe they had a big barrel out front that they were burning stuff.
At 9:00 in the evening, the day they were questioned, the dumpster 200 feet away from their condominium was called in as being engulfed in flames. It was fully
a whole dumpster. So it wasn't wow,
the whole dumpster was on fire. So the police actually did go through the contents of what was left of the contents of that dumpster and found a bunch of women's clothes, but nothing was definitively identified as belonging to Karina. So I mean, the going narrative on that is that it is suspicious, but it was unrelated. I'm not willing to give it up that easily, to be honest with you, because that's if you're going to say that's a coincidence, that is a really, really telling coincidence.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that. So one thing you could look at and say is if they didn't find any evidence of her clothes, is that because he burned her clothes?
Right.
And so was he trying to destroy evidence? Or is that because she packed up and was leaving? And so she had all her clothes stashed somewhere else at a friend's house or something that never came forward or whatever. And so she was not due to work until the day after. So it's not like she didn't show up for work.
Exactly.
And then he called the police. So,
but she did tell them that she would return to the house in Dover Sunday evening.
But she didn't. So the question is why if he's the killer, why would he call the police? I have a possible idea on that, but let me hear what you think.
Rule himself out quick.
But I mean, it didn't. If you give yourself an extra day to burn stuff and burn dumpsters and whatever.
Well, don't set it on fire.
One of the things that occurred to me was back to Delphi. We always go back to our old cases, but the only reason that case got solved is because the killer, Richard Allen, a couple of days after the killings, came forward and contacted a conservation officer and did a formal interview with him to say he was at the trail. And all the information he gave really actually did at the end of the day lead to him being caught and is going to be used against him in the case. Without it, there wouldn't be a case. Why would he do that? Well, we don't know. And maybe we'll find out someday, maybe we won't. But my theory was always that his wife knew he'd been at the trail. And she said, look, you got to go tell the police you were there and tell them what you saw.
Right.
Another theory was that he possibly, because he worked as a CVS in Delphi, he thought someone had recognized him. So he didn't want it to come back afterwards where someone said, hey, I saw Richard Allen there, that guy from CVS. If he came forward first, that would be less suspicion. But one of my theories,
that's good though.
So I wondered if that happened here though, in the nanny case, where the wife was innocent and would say to him, hey, I think that's Karina. You should call the police.
Mm-hmm. Well, to hear a lot of the folks on the discussion forums I looked at today, if he's guilty, she knew about it. There was a lot,
especially once the dumpster started burning.
Yeah, well, it wasn't just the dumpster either, because it turns out he had gotten a permit to dump trash at the transfer station in Dover the day she went missing. So the police actually had to go there with cadaver dogs and check to see if they could find any trace of her at the dump. So they explored that avenue as well. They didn't find anything. So, I mean, as far as tying this guy to the murder with actual evidence, I don't see anything.
So all we really have is his supposed being uncooperative with the police is how he's described, and we have the strange
hostile is what I read.
Yeah, and the strange burning of the dumpster, and then the disposing of stuff at the dump. So those are the only three things. Is there anything else, or
what else was there? Was there anything else?
Was there any sign that he might have been having an affair with her, or did he have anything in his history or anything like that?
I don't want to say that. That is a theory that's been floated.
Yeah.
Is that she had an affair with him and accidentally got pregnant, and he murdered her to cover it up.
Yeah.
But
there's no evidence. That's just like
there's nothing.
Yeah.
So I don't want to,
Right.
I don't want to say like, oh, that's definitely it. But I mean, him being an adult married man who has a hot babysitter that lives in his house.
Yeah.
I mean, it isn't an entirely off base theory, but there's nothing to back it up.
Right.
So people can theorize all they want about him, but the fact remains there's no actual evidence that he did anything.
Right.
So that's kind of a dead end, although there are some really weird coincidences like that dumpster.
Yeah.
I mean, that looks real bad.
Yeah.
Real bad. But so he was questioned, but so were like 300 other people about this. So it doesn't make him unique. But at the same time, he did have a connection to her. So it was definitely something the police wanted to look into pretty deeply. But nothing has ever been found to definitively tie him to her murder. So he was never arrested.
And she did write home that something horrible had happened, but we have no idea what it was.
That's it. Yeah, she never hinted at what it could have been. She never said anything more than I'll tell you when I get home. That's it.
Yeah.
So
see, I do tend to, when I look at those reports of the friends seeing her get in the car with somebody, and to me, I interpreted that she had washed her makeup off, but I could be wrong on that. But I got the impression, and then even the fact that she was seen at the store 24 a couple hours after the nightclub's closed. So I got the impression that she was not picked up by a stranger for sure, that she was with someone or some people that she knew.
Well, I did also read that she was incredibly trusting. So that's also something that you have to keep in mind when it comes to your victimology here.
Yeah.
Is that she was an incredibly open and trusting person. So she made friends fast. That is what I have read. So it also could be that she made friends with someone and decided to go with them to wherever, you know, whether it be another apartment, whether she said, oh, I need a ride home to the studio I'm staying at. Who knows?
Right.
But chances are she was at store 24 with somebody. Don't know.
Okay.
So there's no reporting on that. So I can't confirm or deny that she had someone with her the last time she was seen, but just that she was seen there. So,
are there any more suspects before we get to the rumor?
There's so many more suspects.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a guy named John Zuiz. I don't.
Is this the guy from Andover? I'll look it up.
No, this is the guy from a band called Sleep Chamber.
Oh, okay, that's right. All right. Yeah.
He wrote a song that referenced Zanzibar, and he lived only 2 blocks away from where her remains were found. He had a weird reputation. I mean,
he was in a band.
Yeah, he was a guy in a band. Their music had a lot of lyrics talking about bondage and S&M. So, people, the Satanic Panic.
So in this, was there anything else in the song that referenced the crime or something?
No, it was literally like, I have a tab at Zanzibar, and that's where you'll find me, or something very similar to that. I had heard.
Oh, well, that's not the right. That's not very suspicious at all. No.
He did. He was struggling with heroin addiction at the time, so a lot of people close to him said that he was volatile at the time. So that was something, just an avenue the police took. Nothing ever came of that one either. And then there's Herb. There's Herb Witten.
I don't know who Herb is.
Herb is the guy with the dog.
Oh, okay, the guy from Andover. I gotcha. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this was peculiar. I don't know what came of this, but apparently Herb Witter is a guy that lived in Andover, and he would drive to Boston, downtown Boston, at the time when bars would be closing, so he could pick up drunk women. That was his game. And he went down there with his Great Pyrenees, and him and the dog were wearing matching Superman t-shirts. So that's kind of his hook, I guess.
I'll have to get one for Harry.
That whole story is really, really weird. Yeah. I was on a forum earlier today, and I was reading an account by a neighbor, because Herb, he was a weird dude. This is just what I'm reading. Obviously, I don't know the guy, but he was a very strange guy. By the account of the neighbor of his sister, he would crash at his sister's house a lot in Andover. So a neighbor of hers had actually written in a forum that I read today about some of the interactions that he had had with Herb, and they were all very, very strange. He said that there were times when he found Herb just digging holes in the backyard.
I remember reading that about this guy. Even if he's not the guy, he's killed someone.
Super weird. Yeah, super weird. And I feel kind of bad too, because this guy actually
committed... Oh, Jay Roberts. Did you see that there? I totally forgot about this part of the story.
Oh, yes.
I remember seeing this a couple of years ago when I first...
You want to go back to that actually right now?
Actually, stay with that. Let me try to see if I can find the pictures.
Okay, because some of those pictures are really, really disturbing.
Yeah.
Just Natty, I just wanted to add that it was, I don't know if I mentioned it, but it was heroin that the band leader was struggling with at the time. John Zuiz. I don't know how to pronounce that. So obviously addiction is terrible, and no one should be faulted for it because it is a disease, but that's what was going on with him at the time. So, all right. So we're talking about Herb. Apparently his alibi when he was questioned by police is that he got a speeding ticket on the way home from his little foray to troll drunk women outside of bars. And that was his alibi for the night that she went missing. Was that I couldn't have been, I wasn't there. I got a speeding ticket on 93 on the way home, except she could have been in his trunk. She could have been in the backseat. Like, do they?
Well, no,
they
but
don't
she was at the store at
normally-
24 though, so
But we don't know the time of the speeding ticket.
I think it was enough to provide an alibi, right? So it
But
must have
that's-
been.
I mean, that was, but I'm just throwing stuff at the wall, you know?
Yeah.
Was that like you can't rule him out just based on the speeding ticket? Like they must have had something else to rule him out. That's really the point I was trying to make. So he was cleared, and then less than a year later, he actually committed suicide in his home. So really sad. And a lot of people do speculate about his reasoning for doing that. There's some theories out there where people say that he committed suicide because he couldn't live with the guilt of murdering this girl, but I don't think that's true. So this is some artwork by Susan. How do you pronounce her last name?
Richter, right? So this is the
Richter?
wife of Richter. Yeah, this is the wife of the guy that her boss, right?
Frank Rapp. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So what is that one called?
Arrows,
This is
or
one
it's
that-
under the Arrows file. I'm not. Yeah, it's called Arrows, I think.
Arrows.
The love,
okay.
and it looks like body. I should have prepared this ahead of time because I forgot.
That's
So
okay.
maybe I'm glad Jay reminded us. But this looks like torsos, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And there's one that's just like legs too. I forget what it's called, but it's creepy. I went down the rabbit hole with her art earlier today, and I mean, she's definitely got a style, and I'm sure there's a good reason. I'm not an art critic or anything, you know, but I'm sure there's a reason that she's pretty highly regarded, I guess. So I feel like there was
I forget which
one-
file that would it be under like this digital sketchbook?
No, it's not those. It's further up, I think.
All right, I can scroll up here. Let's see.
Okay.
Any of these look like it might be it? Clown. Connor loves the clowns.
Ugh. Aaron does not.
I
I don't remember what that fear is called, but I have it. I don't like clowns. They freak me out.
Chlorophobia or something. I forget.
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't
It's
know.
legitimate, though.
Maybe it was on Under the Islands. This was like years ago that I looked at this. Maybe not.
There's one that's called like Carried Away or something like that. Or I think there was one called Crescendo that was also really creepy. I don't recall, honestly.
Yeah, I think originally I saw them on a Homer website, Karina
Mhm.
Homer website, and I forgot about that until Jay had just mentioned it here. So,
yeah.
Well,
So-
keep going, and I'll keep looking, see if I can find something.
So another one of the suspects, which actually would have lined up with one of the earlier accountings of what happened outside of the bar when she left, was a guy named Greg Hummel, who's actually still around, still a real estate agent in Boston. So I think it's really, really important to note that he was cleared of this. However, in the December of 1996, he was arrested for kidnapping and attempted rape of a woman in Boston. So that was something sort of, he had other interactions with the police for drunk driving and other violent behavior towards women. But Hummel, he met and took the woman that he was accused of attempting to kidnap and rape from Zanzibar. So, the kidnapping, attempted assault goes to the news. He looks super suspicious. So the police talk to him, and as a real estate agent, he obviously has access to empty apartments in the area too.
Mhm.
So that was an angle that I think the police were very careful in exploring. But he had everything he would have needed, and he had a place to do it. But he was apparently cleared. So
Okay, I think I found it.
Okay, what do you?
Let's see. This is Reddit one. Reddit really comes in handy.
God damn Reddit.
Hold on. Actually, I went to the wrong one. Hold on a second. Let me go to.
Okay. That's okay. So that was, I mean, that's the main list of suspects. There were also some really weird things having to do with who she spent time with. She was dating a Boston police officer for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also dating another guy in South Boston. So obviously we can't speculate on her relationships. I do know that neither one was classified as serious by anybody who knew her. But yeah, she did have a connection to the Boston Police Department through that guy.
So here's some levitation lasso.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that one's creepy.
And this other one looks like a acrobatics for mothers.
Okay.
and what are those legs that are on top?
Ugh. Creepy.
I mean, I guess it's easy. And then the other one's got a whip here too. The guy's got a lasso, right? And looks like a woman's lips on the bottom.
Ugh.
This one, the naked woman here that looks like she's bound up with something or a whip or something.
I don't love it. I mean, it's not my style, honestly, but I do find it funny. Like the lasso one that you were looking at the top, the levitation lasso one.
Yeah.
The lasso was right around the same place that her body was severed. So
yeah.
Theories have been.
It's just like a circle. It almost looks like a circular saw.
It does. It does. So a lot of people were talking in the aftermath of this about the fact that her art it could be construed as being related to the murder. And
does the man in these pictures look like her husband?
Oh, I have no idea. That man is pretty generic looking. So from the pictures that I've seen, I don't think so. I mean, the guy, like, yeah, he was lanky. He had like the floppy hair. He looked, like 90s Hugh Grant-ish a little bit. So not really, I guess. But the guy in those paintings is super vague looking, super generic. He doesn't really have many features, which is, I mean, we're not here to break down art, but it could be. But it could just be a generic dude. I don't know. So JJ has a question, and maybe you know the answer. You've looked more into the psychology angle of all of this stuff.
See, look at this one here again. There's just the legs in the picture.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that people talk about too. Just so creepy.
And
legs.
Yeah, there's like several.
Her explanation for that was that these were done while she was processing what happened to Karina.
Wow, and another whip. There's a lot of whip stuff. This woman was into whips.
Hey, I'm not judging anybody's kinks right now. Not at all.
No.
So, yeah, the question was, has there been anyone within the psychiatric community to explain what type of mental pathology contributes to this type of murder and the mutilation?
I mean, I haven't myself seen anything that, I mean, in terms of, we see with any serial killer, they want to have that control, not just over the person. So they depending on their fantasy, they can revel in having that seeing that fear that they create that gives them that sense of godlike control, but it can also apply to control of their bodies after death. Or even like in Jeffrey Dahmer's case, he wanted his victims to be unconscious and he was obsessed with their chest. So she has some strange bodily. Do you see that? This is a really cool, wild one. Just look at I know it's not as big as we want it, but can you see the guy?
Yeah.
In the like monstrous guy that's in the face of this woman.
The hand? Do you see the hand? It looks like maybe, I don't know. Like when I see this, when I look at that painting, I think domestic violence.
Yeah.
But that's me. I mean, that's just my knee jerk on that. Jay Roberts is asking us to go back to the levitation lasso one, if you don't mind.
I'll try. I closed that, I think. Let's see. I'll have to navigate back to it because I closed that page, but just make sure there's nothing else interesting on this page first.
Mm-hmm.
So she definitely had a weird sense of art. Another This is a different levitation. No, I'll click on it. It's just that's it. But the other one had a lasso around it, so this is a little different.
Yeah, right around the waist, which was
this is probably not the one he wants.
Like honestly, super duper creepy. But to answer you, JJ, I don't know that you could really. I mean, it was a strangulation murder. Like the mutilation of the body afterwards is a different animal completely. I mean, we're talking about somebody who strangled this girl. I mean, that's a close contact murder. That's somebody looking their victim in the face while they're murdering them, unless they're standing behind them or garroting them. But a lot of the time, strangulation is a very, very personal murder.
Yeah, but you just don't know though. Is it someone that does it in a rage? Is it someone that's if you're trying to silence somebody,
Well, there were marks,
or you do, are you taking on a stranger? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so hard to know.
Right.
With on this limited evidence.
Oh, that's a weird one.
Yeah. Lucy flying over.
Oh, that one's pretty actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That looks like something I would have in my house, actually. Honestly. Something that my kids didn't paint or draw, which is 90% of what's in my house.
Look at this. Oh, no, that's a mirror, right? I was like, what is behind her?
Yeah, it's a mirror.
But the mirror is not reflecting her.
It could just be, I don't know.
Because it also looks kind of like a torso.
Mm-hmm. It kind of does. Oh.
And there's
I don't know, man.
There's a black bird. And the woman looks kind of tortured or guilty feeling as though like reading into it was the life or the artist doing her own portrait.
Right.
And I don't know if the flower would symbolize something else.
I don't know, but it looks like sharper than everything else. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Mike commented that he thinks cutting her in half was to remove evidence rather than purely being a psychotic. Obviously, there are psych issues. Yeah. I mean, nobody's saying that the guy who did this, whoever he may be, was not suffering from some kind of mental illness. We can't draw that distinction though without really knowing more. Look at the taking a step one. That's
another.
Ugh, just the legs. But I do think that theory is probably the closest to what happened, is that cutting the bottom half of this woman was to remove some kind of evidence.
This one is probably titled the girl in the. This one is titled "Girl in the Can."
Ooh, yeah, creepy.
And again, that's a torso. It's like he's got a torso inside this can that's being held by.
Oh, that's super creepy.
And
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
She is blondish looking and.
To answer you, BL, yes, the newspaper did let people know that she was severed when she was found. Although they did keep some of the details of that under wraps. They're not going to give every detail of this, but they never released information as to whether her torso was naked or clothed. That's the piece of information that they held back.
Oh, I got the one that Jay wanted. I got back to it. All right.
There it is. Oh, that is the creepiest thing. Especially given the context that we know now, you know? Like that. It does. Ugh. I don't like it.
Acrobatics for Mother's Shell is the name of it, right? Or
No, this is Levitation Lasso.
Oh, okay, this is Levitation Lasso.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. Which is when the magicians do the trick, they do the lasso around it so that you realize that she's not secretly being held up by something. Although obviously it's still a magician's trick, but I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
And
what else do magicians do? They cut bodies in half.
cut bodies in half. Yep, exactly. So, that's something. I mean, again, she had said that this was her way of sort of coping with what happened. I don't know. It could be that they did it and they were trying to cover it up, and this was her massive amount of guilt as far as what they had actually done to her. But again, like, it was a series of coincidences that worked to make them look really, really bad. But again, we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
It's not solved. We don't know anything, you know, but
So-
I do know. And it's just one thing that I want to say about where she was found. The dumpster that she was found in, I've walked that area. It is dark. It looks sort of secluded. I actually walked down there to try and find a place to smoke a joint before it was illegal, or before it was legal. But that is in full view of so many windows in so many apartment buildings. And it's also right on the side of the Mass Pike. So this guy, whoever he is, took a plastic garbage bag full of 50 pounds of a woman's torso and threw it in this dumpster in full sight of whoever was awake to see it at the time, whoever was driving by. That seems slightly brazen to me. Do you think that there was a car involved? I mean, the going theory is that there was, but do you think there was?
I mean,
After reading what you read about this?
It would seem like you would want to transport the body with a car.
Yeah.
But then if that's the case, why would it be found so close to where she was last seen?
I mean,
if
maybe
you had a car, wouldn't you want to take the body further away?
One would think, yeah. I mean, I would think I would take it if it was me, and I'm not a killer, but I've read enough true crime and watched enough true crime to know what works and what doesn't for, hiding stuff. But I think
So I would
throw it in the water.
So I would actually say that I believe he was on foot.
You think
And
so?
He put it in a bag and he
And it happened close to there then.
50 pounds is, I mean, even we got little girls that deliver UPS packages that are like 75 pounds now. So
Okay, but also think about the fact, though, that all that was found on this trash bag of the offender was a half a fingerprint. That's it. So if he's carrying this for blocks and blocks and blocks,
or
he's gonna leave more than one fingerprint on the thing.
Unless he had gloves on.
True. So we don't know what we don't know, but I think that it's either likely that it happened very close to where that dumpster was located, because
That's what I
no one's
think,
going to want to carry 50 pounds of trash, I guess, is how this guy saw her, which is horrible. But no one's going to want to carry a 50-pound trash bag for more than a couple of blocks.
Yeah.
So either it happened close.
That's what I would think, that it's close to there.
Yep. Either it happened close and they went on foot, or they killed her elsewhere and brought her back in a car. I tend to believe the first rather than the second, but There were accounts of her getting in a car, so who knows?
And if they all right, so I guess I would go with this, that she more than likely got in the car with someone that she knew. I don't know if she actually had cell phone, but I think there's a fairly good chance she did, or at least someone knew she was going to the club and was just trolling around afterwards and find her and said, "Hey, Karina, come on in." And so it may not have been a planned thing. It was someone that knew that she hit the clubs. Could have been someone who regularly patrolled the clubs looking for girls, which would fit the Boston cop theory.
Oh, it would also fit her too.
It would fit, but I mean, but he did kind of have an alibi, right? So
sort of, yeah.
To me, I'm not saying it's a Boston cop, but that's what we're hearing, and it fits that kind of theory.
It kind of does, yeah.
I was told from a semi-inside source that she had 2 nights before this partied with another girl and 2 Boston cops. Again, that doesn't mean
anything, but it could mean everything.
And one of these Boston cops is pretty prominent, or son of someone very prominent, and that's all we'll say. But we'll leave everybody else to speculate on that. We don't want to say, because who the hell knows, right? You don't want to get into that game of playing. But if somebody has information, come forward. And if it's, we'll do what we can.
Come to me, come to Kev, doesn't matter. Come to both of us. But, I've got my antenna up on this one. So,
yeah, we'll treat it fairly. Yeah. But I would say, I think that that would be my guess, is that I don't actually, even though those photos, that artwork is weird and his behavior is a little suspicious, I just don't see him calling the cops. But I do think, I mean, if he's a murderer, but I do think that once he called the cops, he may have been involved with other shit that he wanted to burn up. So some other unrelated crime,
Or it could have been a neighbor. Or it could have been someone flicking a cigarette butt.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been a total accident. We don't know.
So I would say she got in the car of someone that she knew, someone that maybe patrolled the nightclubs regularly looking for girls and had a certain reason that they would be confident getting in the car with him. And I can tell you, like I said, I mean, in my many years as a bar owner in Worcester, the girls do get in the cars with the cops, and sometimes even when they're on duty. So I'm not. Most of the cops I know are great people, and even the ones, I'm not trying to cast any kind of aspersions on the police at all. I know but it's just, it is a reality. You got young guys in uniform and girls like it, and they build. So did she get in the car with somebody like that who was maybe off duty that night, and but she knew him from that, and he was used to patrolling that area, and ended up at some kind of an apartment not very far from where she was found, which was near Fenway Park. And I think that she spent the night at some time, at 3:34, she went out to buy cigarettes or a snack or something like that. She had no reason to believe she was in danger. But then something happened the next day, whether it was an argument, whether it was this this killer had an actual fetish for killing someone, similar to a serial killer. I would say he probably strangled her, and then as part of that was part of his desire, his fantasy, and then he had to dispose of the body. And he walked that half to the dumpster. Now they searched the area in the other dumpsters, and they never found her legs. So maybe he did, if he had sex with her and there was a possibility of semen sample, then he was more careful about disposing the legs, maybe cut them into some smaller pieces and threw them in the harbor.
I mean, I agree with that part of it. Absolutely. With the disposal of the legs, I think they're gone forever. I don't think that there's any chance. And I mean, who knows? Who knows? Maybe they will be. Maybe they'll be found tomorrow. Who knows? Yeah. But I think they're gone. And I don't think there's.
Oh, I do too. I think he threw him in the harbor, and you're never going to see him again.
I think that there's enough aquatic creatures that would have.
Yeah, this was 20 years ago. So yeah. So.
But I don't know. I don't know. Does this feel like, just not looking at the suspects or anything that we've already discussed, like as far as the crime itself goes, does that feel to you like it was something premeditated, like she was targeted, or does it feel more opportunistic?
Well, the fact that she got in the car and the fact that, to me, her makeup was washed off. Now, it could have been washed off by the killer, but to me, it feels like she washed it off. Like the fact that she was in the store 2 hours later. So, if this was a serial killer, he's going to kill her within a half hour. So I don't think she'd be in a store 24. So I think she got in the car of someone she knew and ended up in that area. And at some point, either much later in the morning or possibly the next day, for whatever reason, he killed her. And it could have even been a strangulation game gone wrong or something. Who knows? I mean, but
well, we've heard that story before.
Yeah, I mean, it does it happens. It is a real thing. So but I do think it's definitely someone that she knew. When I say knew, had been out with him before. Doesn't mean that they were lifelong friends, but they knew each other enough. That they knew each other by name. That's my guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's as fair an assessment as anything else, You don't know. But yeah, White Rabbit's good point. He could have also just put the legs in a second dumpster that happened to not be discovered or searched before going ultimately to a landfill.
Right.
So I think it was probably more something like that rather than, the ingenious move of taking the legs somewhere else and cutting them up. I think it was probably just, well, we'll put this there and then, walk a little further with the rest of her and dump it in a different dumpster. I think it was just, it happened maybe that one got emptied.
Right.
I don't think it was any super clever move by the killer.
There was no staging. It wasn't like it was because it was in a bag, right? And
right.
So he probably the expectation was that it wouldn't be found.
Right.
But there was,
and I think that's definitely fair. I don't think this guy thought for a second that anyone would be digging through this dumpster. I mean, those dumpsters were being emptied, I believe, that day. So the day that she was found. So some of the area dumpsters had been emptied already and were already on the way to the landfill when her body was discovered.
a question, Aaron. This should have occurred to me before, but so it was found 2 days later, but how long was the decay on it?
So that's the other thing that's really strange. There's no indication in anything that I've written that rigor had set in. So I don't think, based on what I know,
there would have been no blood, right?
There was a small amount of blood. There wasn't no blood at all.
But I mean, not enough blood for rigor mortis, I don't think.
Right. So I don't think that there was decay. I think.
I mean, did they have an idea how long she had been in the dumpster or how long she'd been dead?
I haven't read anything on that. I wasn't able to find anything about a time of death or any autopsy findings or anything like that.
Right. And that might be something the police don't tell you because it's unsolved, right? So
right. So it's still open. You can't FOIA it. So
it is possible she was killed not long after the store 24, and just the body wasn't discovered for a couple of days.
Killed 2 hours before she was found in the dumpster. We don't know.
Although it was June though, so it was probably warm. Would have been flies and stuff if there was.
And I think it would have been noted too in the reporting that there were a lot of flies or something. I mean, the way that this was told, as far as the homeless man discovering her remains, there wasn't anything about, maggots and flies and all that stuff. There wasn't anything like that. She was double bagged in a trash dumpster. You would think that they would remark in their talks with him about, a smell or, horrific things like that, finding the disco rice and all that on the body. And there was no talk of that.
And obviously
so I don't know if they held it out of the reporting or if there wasn't anything.
And obviously there was no surveillance to what it might have shown somebody walking with a trash bag at that time.
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the middle of the night, so.
Right.
And it's the day before trash day.
Right.
Who's going to remark or even notice, really, someone taking out the trash the night before trash day?
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
But Kevin C. This is why I think your comment here is why I think that the bathtub thing is the prevailing theory on this, is because if she was cut in half in the bathtub, all the blood goes down the drain, and he could have let water run over her for as long as he needed to
make sure there was no fingerprints or any other trace evidence and stuff.
So
Yeah, that's a good theory. That's a very good theory.
Clean. That's the theory that spoke to me the loudest, was that she was definitely mutilated in a bathtub.
Right.
Or near to, or a room with a drain. But I do know that the police did look into med students at the time as well. Nothing came of it because the med schools are at the time were guarded with security overnight. So they would have obviously been like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
But that was something that they had looked into, was because all the necessary tools are there. There's a lot of space to do this. There's a lot of space to clean it up too. So
there may be more in the police report too, like toxicology. Was there signs of drugs in the system, or was there, when they looked at the fingernails, was there a sign of a struggle? There's just things that they're not going to tell us, I guess, because even though it's been this amount of time, they're going to keep that stuff sealed until there is ever an indictment.
Right.
Right.
Right. Which, who knows if there ever will be. I mean,
well, the longer something goes, it doesn't seem likely.
Yes. And Michael Bradford, yes. I don't know if the killer had cut her to disguise a pregnancy, but they would be able to identify whether she was pregnant, regardless of whether her bottom half was present. They can test what remains of her blood to find that out.
So they possibly didn't, they just didn't tell us, or because we don't know, right? So
we don't know, but they can.
They can.
I mean, those tests exist. So yeah, they could have determined if she was pregnant. If she was, I'm sure we would have heard about it. So I don't know.
I wonder what the status of collecting DNA was in 1996.
96.
It was probably very early.
Yeah.
In that development of that.
I mean, I'm sure there's something in whatever archives they have.
Yeah.
To test, but I don't know if they have. I haven't heard anything.
Would they say, well, you probably don't know this, but would they save tissue samples or anything like that?
I would think so.
Because I don't know, we see evidence gets disposed of eventually. So what would they say? Obviously, they're not going to keep the torso stored somewhere in a freezer. So
right. No, they released her body to her family,
Yeah.
or what they had of her body to her family.
Yeah.
I would think they would save anything they could that would help identify who did this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm seeing Dave's comments. He let the secret slip there with who she was dating. So
that's another Dave McGrath. That's not our Dave McGrath. That's another Dave McGrath who has posted in with his name. So we don't want to be responsible.
What?
I'm kidding. It's like,
I was like, huh?
If anybody wants to sue us for saying that, it's not associated with the channel.
Yeah.
All right.
So we didn't say it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there anything else, Aaron? Or should we call it an ad? I have to help a friend of mine that is a screenwriter and has a deadline.
Okay. Oh, well, just one more thing. Dave did comment she did have a cell phone.
She did have a cell phone. Okay.
Her call
Good.
logs have never been scrutinized nor published. So.
And I don't think at that time they had GPS sensors in the phones. So
no, that was back in the ping days.
Yeah, you had all you had was you could ping on, which you would have had plenty of pinging with all the towers in Boston, so they could have triangulated her very well, I think. But
but back in '96, there weren't half as many as there are now.
There still were a lot in '96.
Yeah, there were more there than there were out where I live. So
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Everybody, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I'm not sure when we're on next, but we have a lot of things in the works. And if you have any crime tips or anything, whether it's related to the cases we're talking about or other cases, Crispo, or you know some of the big ones, and then anything else that you think we might be interested, please reach out. Okay.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Good night, Aaron. Thank you.
Yeah.